helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, Canadian certified counselor and award-winning psychotherapist.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Life Transformations show. Today's show is titled Jezebel's Daughter: The Negative Effects of Being Raised by a Psychopathic Mother. We often see Jezebel as an evil queen, but we hardly ever stop to think about her as a mother. In today's show, I will be looking at the life of Athalia, the daughter of Jezebel, and to a lesser extent, the life of Ahaziah, who is Athaliah's son, to highlight the negative impacts of having a psychopathic mother. The vast majority of us know the name Jezebel and has come to associate it, rightfully so, with evil, manipulation, and control. Whereas most of us may not have even heard of Jezebel's daughter, Athalia, or associate any negative traits with that name. However, as we will see from this show, Athalia displayed many of the evil characteristics of her mother and could arguably be said to be even more evil than Jezebel. I know for some of us that is hard to believe, but as we go through the show today, you will be seeing that Athalia displayed very severe psychopathic tendencies and, like her mother, could be classified as a psychopath. So, before we go further, it is good for me to give a brief definition of what I mean by psychopath. A psychopath is someone who isn't able to feel for others and who act in antisocial or reckless ways. So we see Jezebel displaying many of the characteristics of a psychopath, and we see her daughter Athalia doing the very same thing. And as we go through the different points, where I'm going to be bringing out some of these traits of Athalia. So we know the name Jezebel very well, and despite its popularity, many of us don't name our daughters by the name Jezebel because there's just such a connotation of evil to it that many people don't do so. But nevertheless, there are some people who name their daughters Jezebel. The name Jezebel was ranked number 16,240 in terms of popularity in 2020, whereas Athalia was ranked 2026. On the other hand, names like Sarah is ranked number 84 in popularity, and Hannah was ranked number 41. Interestingly, although the name Jezebel dropped over 6,445 spots from 2019, the name Athalia is increasing in popularity and has climbed 1,712 spots from where it was in 2019. And it is growing in popularity. So when we think of the name Athalia, there is not a lot of negative associations with it. But as we go through this show, you will see that Athalia did as much or more evil as her mother Jezebel. So Athalia was the daughter of Jezebel and the King Ahab. And she married King Jehoram, who was the son of the righteous King Jehoshaphat. Jehoram was the oldest son of King Jehoshaphat. So today I'm going to be going through 5 effects of having a psychopathic mother. And the purpose of this show is to help those who are suffering as a result of being a child of someone with psychopathic tendencies. But this show is also geared to equip Those of us who provide help to others so that we can better know how to deal with someone who is suffering and be able to identify these signs. So when we think of Athalia, as I said, there is not a lot of negative associations, but one of the things that came out very strongly from scripture as I studied this name, is that Athalia lacked empathy. And the people who are children of psychopaths often end up lacking empathy as well. So remember, I said that Jezebel was her mother, and we all know the evil that Jezebel perpetrated, the things that she did, the lack of empathy that she showed for Naboth when she had him killed so that she could get his garden. And so it's not surprising that when it comes to Athalia, we see her lacking empathy. So in what way did she lack empathy? So when her son Ahaziah died, she had her grandsons killed so that she could ascend the throne. So this grandmother at the time killed her son's children so that she could take over as queen. And as the story goes, they had to rescue one of her son's children and had him hidden for 6 years so that he could be the next king in line, because what Athalia wanted to do was to wipe out all of Ahaziah's sons and everyone that could possibly come up to be king so that she could reign as long as possible. So this shows a frightening lack of empathy. So people who are raised by narcissistic mothers often display this frightening lack of empathy. And this is so because as children, they see this pattern in their parent. And we learn from our environment, we learn from how we see things play out in our household. But children of psychopath learn this to display this lack of empathy because emotions and feelings are not encouraged by the psychopathic mother. As a matter of fact, psychopathic mothers tend to look negatively on emotion. So if a child is crying after being hurt, they are told that they should shut up and that they're just trying to draw attention to themselves. And so children quickly learn that pain is not something that they should pay attention to. So as a result of this lack of empathy and the negative correlation that they make to emotions, to feeling emotions, they grow up not being able to feel the emotions of others. And so Athalia, the daughter of Jezebel, grew up in such a household where empathy was not encouraged, and as a result, she too became a psychopath. There is a case that is well known about this mother and son in current times, where the mother sent this son out to do a certain deed, and she told him good luck and do a good job. But the job that she was sending him out to do was to kill someone who had found out that they had illegally gotten a loan of $280,000 in his name. So the son, David, went and had this man killed. And on his way back, he stopped and he bought his mother flowers. So we see the lack of empathy by both. We see this mother who wants this man killed. And we see the son who, after doing the job of killing this man, stopped to buy her flowers as if it's just another day at the office. So children who are raised in this kind of environment, they grow up to lack empathy. And I know this is an extreme case, and I know Athaliah's killing of her grandchildren is an extreme case as well. But the point I am making here is that psychopaths and children of psychopaths lack empathy. And so if you're in a relationship with someone who was raised in a household where empathy was not demonstrated by their parent, they might be showing lack of empathy to you in many different ways. So one form of lack of empathy could be there is no caring for you when you're sick. When you're sick, it is seen as a nuisance, and it's almost as if you are bothering them by being sick. And so this is an example of the kind of lack of empathy that you can see if you're in a relationship with someone that is not the extreme form. Other lack of empathy could be that you are hurting as a result of some disappointment in your life, or maybe even the death of a family member, of one of your family member. And this person, who either is a psychopath or was raised by a psychopath, doesn't show you any emotions, doesn't understand your pain, but acts in ways that shows that they have no concern for what you are going through. So we see Athalia, Jezebel's daughter, showing this lack of empathy in having her grandsons killed. But we also see Athalia showing lack of empathy for the people of Judah in that she erected altars of Baal in the very temple of the Lord. So just picture that. It's like someone coming into a Christian church and setting up another worship station for another religion with no care for how this would offend the people who go there day after day or week after week to worship. She had the altars of Baal built in the places where God was supposed to be worshipped, and she had her priests, the priests of Baal, take over those centers of worship. So you can read about this in 2 Kings 11:18 and the 2 Chronicles 24 verse 7. And this shows that she had no empathy for the people of Judah. The second trait that we see in Athalia, the daughter of Jezebel, is that she was manipulative and controlling. We are told that she turned the heart of her husband Jehoram from the ways of God to Baal worship. In 2 Kings 8 verse 18, we read, "He followed the ways of the kings of Israel as the house of Ahab had done, for he married a daughter of Ahab. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord." That's referring to Athaliah's husband Jehoram. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He followed the ways of Baal. So what we have happening in this family is that Athalia is doing to her husband what her mother Jezebel did to Ahab. Jezebel had the heart of Ahab turned against God into Baal worship. And now we see Athalia using the same kind of control and manipulation to turn her husband's heart to Baal worship and establishing Baal worship in Judah. So in our podcast that we did on the 7 differences between male and the female psychopaths, we look at the fact that female psychopaths use sex and beauty to manipulate and control others, and not not often force and strength like male psychopaths. So it is very likely that Athalia used these means, her beauty and sex, to manipulate Jehoram, to the point that Jehoram, who was from a godly father, his father was the godly King Jehoshaphat, and she used these means to control Jehoram, I should say, to the point where his heart was turned against God. And so in the Bible Knowledge Commentary, we read that Jehoram's godly father had less influence on him than his ungodly wife. And because Athalia was very manipulative and controlling, and she, although she was not the king, she was ruling Judah through her husband by her manipulation and control. So if you are in someone who is a child of a psychopath or someone who is a psychopath themselves, you're most likely suffering from manipulation and control. And sometimes manipulation can be subtle, like a psychopathic person might not want you to visit your relative because they want to have total control over what you do. And being exposed to your relatives may bring you under other influences. So they keep you away from your relatives. And they might not do it in an overt way, like saying don't go and visit your relatives, but every time that you go and visit, there is a fight afterwards, or every time that you visit, there is no intimacy in the relationship for weeks after. So very soon after that, you learn that it's not a good thing, that bad things happen when you visit your relatives. So Athalia may have used means like this to force her husband, to manipulate her husband into Baal worship.
Michael will be right back. You have been listening to the Life Transformation Show, where award-winning psychotherapist Michael Hart of Elim Counseling Services has been speaking on the topic Jezebel, the negative effects of being raised by a psychopathic mother. You can find out more about us at elimcounselingministry.com, where you can also make a donation to this Christ-centered ministry. Back to Michael.
The next point is that Ahaziah, her son, was weak and submissive. So the point is that sons of psychopathic mothers are usually weak in terms of their resolve and their ability to stand up for themselves. We see in the text as we read about Athaliah's son Ahaziah that when he became king, that his mother was ruling for him. She was leading him in the ways of Baal worship and causing him to do, as the Bible says, much evil in the sight of the Lord. So dominant and controlling mothers who are psychopaths, often raise dominant daughters and passive sons. So in the Bible we have Athalia, who is the daughter of a psychopath, and our psychopathic mother Jezebel, and we see her as being strong and powerful and controlling Ahab's throne. But yet we see Ahaziah, the son of Athalia, being a weak and passive king, where he is a king, but his mother is ruling in his stead. So sons of psychopathic mothers often are weak in terms of their ability to stand up for themselves because they're dominated so much by their mother. But the other reason that they're weak is that they grow up in household where they see the mother being dominant. They see the psychopathic mother running the house. And in Jezebel's case, she was running all of Israel instead of her husband, King Ahab. And so sons who grow up with that kind of a dynamic where the mother is in charge and the father is just a figurehead doing the mother's work will also become, in most cases, weak men. where the daughters will mirror the mother and become dominant and strong women who are manipulative and controlling. So Ahaziah, the son of Athalia, who is a psychopath, was a weak man. He was a weak king. And we're told that he did so much evil in the sight of Israel that he was assassinated, but in less than a year of reign, he was assassinated because of the evil that he was doing at the hands of his mother. So the people of Israel couldn't stand the evil that he was perpetrating against them. So they had him killed after just 6 months. But the way the story unfolds in the Bible, we see that after 6 months and he was killed, as I said earlier, his mother Athalia killed his children so that she could ascend the throne. So the next point is that children of psychopaths often lack self-autonomy. And we see this in the story in the life of Ahaziah, where Ahaziah, this grown man who is king, is not able to do the things that he wanted to do as king. We see his mother ruling the country in his stead. So if you are a child of a psychopath, the psychopathic mother will see you as an extension of herself. She wants her ways to be your way. So it's not who you love and want to marry. It's who she wants you to marry to. It's not what you want to become. It's what, in terms of her profession, is what she wants you to become. It's not about you growing up and maturing as a man and launching out in the world. It's about you being there at her beck and call. So we see these tendencies in male children of psychopathic mothers, that they're often not able to thrive in life. They're often not able to establish strong relationship with a female because the mother interferes and is very much in control of everything that they do. So this can make a relationship, make the life of the females in their lives a living hell, where it's just so hard to get them to bond and to connect with the females in their lives, because the mother is competing for their attention and for their time, and she is not interested in their well-being. She's really interested in her well-being because it's really just about her. It's not about the well-being of the children. And so we see Ahaziah, the king, doing what the mother wants him to do, to the point where he ended up being killed. And I know this is an extreme case again, but the point that I want to raise here is that the children of psychopaths, they lose such self-autonomy that something in them dies, so that they can never become themselves. They're actually dying emotionally because their lives are so entwined and enmeshed with their mother that they're not really living for themselves. They're living for their psychopathic mother, and the mother will get them to do whatever she wants them to do. So in the story that was told when we look at the first point, the lack of empathy, where we had Kenny Kimes being sent by his mother, Santi Kimes, to kill someone. She's not concerned about the trouble that Kenny is getting into. She is more concerned about covering her tracks so that she doesn't get charged for a crime. And so it is that children of psychopaths are often like pawns, used as pawns by the psychopath. And so the fifth point that I want to cover today is that psychopaths, they have this tendency to distort reality to serve their purposes. They distort reality to serve their purposes. And let me explain how I see this in this story. So we are told in 2 Kings 11 and verse 13 that when Athaliah, and I'll just read here, when Athaliah heard the noise made by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord. She looked, and there was the king standing by the pillar as the custom was. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her robes and called out, "Treason, treason," unquote. And so let me just explain what is happening here. Remember when I said that Athaliah tried to kill all of her sons' children so that there would be no heir to the throne? There was one little boy by the name of Joash that was hidden. He was about a year old at the time. And so Joash was hidden, and she didn't know that Joash was hidden. And she thought all the children were killed. And so what ended up happening after 6 years of her reign, the people of Israel were in such torment that they said, "We are going to anoint the rightful heir of the throne, Joash, this 7-year-old boy, and we are going to put him on the throne because he is rightfully the king instead of Athalia, because as long as Joash is alive, Athalia has no right to the throne." And so the people had this ceremony, and they declared Joash, 7 years old, king. So it must have been very bad, for the people of Israel to say, people of Judah to say, "We are going to put a 7-year-old on the throne because we cannot stand what Athalia is doing anymore." And so they had him ascend the throne. And when she saw what was happening, she shouted, "Treason, treason." But the reality was that she was the one who had committed treason. She was the one who had murdered and killed to ascend the throne. But she is making it sound as if she is in the right, and Joash, who is the rightful heir to the throne, had no right to be king. And so it is that if you are in a relationship with someone who is from a psychopathic mother, that they will distort reality and they will make you feel as if you're going crazy, because when you think something is obviously wrong, they will make you feel you are the one that's in the wrong. And so this can be very, very frustrating, because their reality is what counts in their minds. So I'm quickly running out of time here today, but so let me, in closing, say that not every child of a psychopath manifests these tendencies, but every child of a psychopath is emotionally wounded in a deep way. So if you can identify with any of what I have talked about here today, get help so you can break free from the control, because you can't break free from the control on your own. I want to remind you that Elim, we are not for a profit organization, so we depend on your donations to stay on the air. And so if you haven't donated to us yet, please consider doing so by going to our website at elimcounselingministry.com. Elim is spelled E-L-I-M, counseling with 2 L's, ministry.com. We also want to remind you that we have over 200 podcasts on our YouTube channel for your listening pleasure, so you can access that through our website. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Life Transformation Show, and remind you that we're on the air every Monday morning at 9:30 a.m. So until next time, this is your host, Michael Hart of Elim Counseling Services, praying that God would bless you in all your relationships and to keep you sound in mind and pure in heart.